Hello everyone. So if you've been tuning in, this is the third video in a series of 3 videos about mindful parenting and mindful disciplining. So I wanted to give you 3 steps of things that need to be implemented in your home when wanting to shift into more mindful disciplining of children and mindful parenting. So the first lesson we learned is that children are our mirrors, and that in order to affect true change, we need to be the ones who change first. The second thing we looked at in our second video is setting up certain rules for your home, and we made a difference between main rules and flexible rules. And we also touched upon consequences, and that we want to look at allowing natural consequences to occur and not masking punishments as these consequences. And now today in this third video, I want to get into consequences a little bit more. I want to touch upon timeouts also, and also how to help children make choices, right? So when we look at parenting and mindful parenting, the idea is to really help children mold and shape behaviors rather than disciplining, right? We want the notion of disciplining children to really be out the window, and that our focus is really about creating and maintaining and growing a relationship with our children, right? That is number one. There's nothing else that we want that should affect the relationship we have with our child, right? It's not for the sake of having order in the home that we want to sacrifice the relationship we have with our child. So that's one thing that's really important to understand. So now thinking about molding children's behaviors, what we need to look at is always think of a child not as being a child that is either good or bad, but really all children are good, and they're learning how to behave. They're learning how to act in this world. They're learning to become themselves. And I think if we can look at them like that, that we're more like teachers towards them rather than looking at them through a magnifying glass and when are they doing something right, when are they doing something wrong, they're more likely to learn these behaviors that we want them to hone. So when it comes to consequences, I said first of all we want them to be natural consequences, and at the same time you kind of want to give children the heads up of a consequence that will come up with something. So I think that the important thing to do, one of the best tools that a parent can have, is actually giving children choices. And there's 2 reasons why this is important. Number one, by giving them a choice, they learn to, and they feel more in control. Number one, they feel more in control of their own lives. Number 2, they learn to make choices, which is an important overall skill to have. And the third thing is that they learn to be accountable for their choices, right? And understand, they will naturally understand that there are consequences to choices, and then you are held accountable for them. So those are really important life skills for them to have. And what better way to do it than during our parenting? So I think that what's important for us to do as parents and caregivers is to kind of connect the dots between an action, a choice, and a consequence, right? Because sometimes kids don't always make that link. And then allow them to truly make the choice. And if it is going to be a mistake, then it's a mistake and it's okay. And you'll have another chance to learn. So for example, if a child, you're walking in the mall, for instance, and you want them to hold your hand and they don't want to, so then it could be something like, all right, mom is gonna let you walk ahead, but I have to make sure that I can see you at all times. If you walk too much further ahead, then that means that you want mommy to hold your hand, right? And then you ask the child, do you understand? Of course they're gonna say yes, but you ask a child to repeat to you what you said, and then you let them know once again. You have to make the link between the choice and the consequence. So then the next words would be, So if you run ahead, that means that you choose for mommy to hold your hand, right? And then they, start walking. Yes, they do run ahead, for instance. You go over calmly. They just missed. You know what I mean? We have to think of it as, all right, it's trial and error. So they tried and they, they didn't succeed the first time. It's okay. And you just go over and you say, well, I guess that you chose that mommy should hold your hand. It's okay. We'll try again next time. And no anger, nothing. This is a teaching moment, right? And then you hold your child's hand, and in a few minutes you say, oh, are you ready to try again? Right? So again, because then it doesn't feel like it's a punishment. And at the end of the day, what do you want? You want your child to learn a certain behavior, right? It's not about controlling them. That needs to go out the window. So again, always link what the choice is with the consequence that goes with it. And when they make the choice, let's say they don't make the right choice, remind them that they made the choice of the consequence and that it's okay, we'll get a chance to try again, right? Same thing with, for example, you tell a child, all right, you can watch TV or play a video game, right before dinner time, but as soon as I ask you to come over and tell you, dinner time, then you have to shut it off. Otherwise, no electronics for the rest of the evening, something like that, right? So you ask your child, turn it off, it's time for dinner. They don't listen. So now you say, well, I guess you chose not to have to play video games, right? And you remove it. So again, it's always making that link for them between the choice and the consequence. And you also want to let them know before they're in the moment of it happening, right? A lot of times I see that happening a lot, and you think like, oh, but he knew from the night before. I don't have to remind him every time. No, think of it as if it's a new rule that you're implementing, because children will use that, right? Or it's just a loophole for them to test. So make sure that you remind them of that. If it's something that's important to you and that you're implementing in your home, make sure that before getting into it altogether, you give the choice and the consequence that goes with it. So choices are super important. They have a lot of benefits, and it's a great way to help children transition into things as well. Let's say if a child, for example, always gives you a hard time taking a bath, so then you can say something like, all right, do you want to go brush your teeth first or get in the bath first? Right? Because now you're giving a choice, so now they feel in control, but in fact, it's within the perimeters of what you want them to be doing, right? So choices are a wonderful thing. I find that they help children calm too. Like I've had children that get really upset about something that has happened or whatever it is, and then and they're crying, having a tantrum, and then when you give a choice, for example, something gets taken away from them, you can just go ahead and say, all right, well, do you want me to give it back to you? You get a choice. Do you want me to give it back to you tonight after you do whatever it is you wanted your child to do? Or I can hold on to it till tomorrow. You let me know which one you want, right? So again, giving choices narrows things down for them and makes it very concrete, and it's easier for them to choose. But at the same time, they feel that they're in control and that you're not the one completely controlling them, okay? So choices are a really good thing. Next thing I want us to look into is timeout. I think there's a very big misuse of timeout. Again, it's like we said in the second video, we talk about giving consequences, but in fact, they're punishments that we're giving, and we're just wrapping them in a beautiful bow and calling them like a beautiful bow, and calling them consequences, but really they're punishments. I think the same thing is happening with this timeout. The whole idea about a timeout is not to punish your child. The whole idea of a timeout is like a chill out, like let's chill out, let's relax, let's breathe, and let's be able to figure this one out, right? So now what's happening a lot of times is that a parent puts a child in timeout, but they're like upset when they bring them into timeout. Timeout, time for timeout, go in your room, right? Whereas timeout, I don't think is really working out so well. On the contrary, the child gets even more frustrated because now it's as if you're just you know, sending them to their room and not really staying in the moment and dealing with what's going on. And that's what's really important to do. Not that you're dismissing it. It's almost like a dismissal when they're sent to their room versus timeout that let's breathe, let's, you know, regroup and revisit, right? So two things I feel are going on. Children are getting timeout left, right, and center for anything that they're doing. So now the timeout doesn't mean anything anymore. And then the second thing is that the way that the timeout is implemented makes them feel like they're being punished, actually. And now it, you know, all sorts of behaviors start happening that, you know, that escalate. So the way to do a timeout is this. A timeout is really, you have to tell yourself in your mind, it's like chill out. So if it's something really small and you can do it right where they are, they don't need to, let's say, go into their room and take a full-blown kind of timeout. They could just, like, the timeout could be like, you know, take a little break, take a deep breath. All right, let's regroup, right? Regroup, take a deep breath. You can hold your child, you know, you can put some pressure on them. That's very calming, something like that. You can give them a hug and you say, like, all right, let's, you know, let's take a deep breath and let's calm, right? But then when you need to really do a timeout where a child is, you know, losing their cool completely and having a tantrum or some kind of meltdown, then what you want to do is, you know, maybe have a little space for them where they can go and something like that. And again, think about the timeout as not having these rules of you as a parent bring them into timeout and leaving them there, because that feels like a punishment. But rather, I enter the timeout with a child. When I put a child in timeout for whatever reason it is, I'm always with them in the timeout, right? I go into the timeout with them. So it's more about like, all right, you let me know when you're ready, you know, to start again. For me, I play with kids, you know, and during therapy sessions. So we're in a big room and I tell them, you know, like, have a seat and let's just breathe and let's talk about this. But I need you to just, you know, first we need to relax a little bit. We need to, you know, take a deep breath and we need to calm, right? And I stay there right with them. I sit down at their level, right next to them. If they don't want me too close because they're really upset, I'll go a little bit further away, but I'm present. I think that's the important piece. You need to be present and you need to see what your child needs in that moment. Sometimes they need to be held, physically held, especially when they're younger, right? Because they need to, you know, they're expressing those feelings and they need to be held. Sometimes they need to be left alone, right? But you're present. So it doesn't mean that you have to be necessarily sitting there in the room next to them, because that could also, you know, trigger some reactions depending on what they're going through. But you show up, you pop in on them, you ask them from far how they're doing, do you need anything, right? You're not harassing them, but you're present with them while they go through timeout, because the timeout is really about them calming, right? Once a child calms, then you can start teaching lessons about what you needed to teach them about. But in the moment, this is not the time to have discussions. This is not the time to discuss anything. It's really about calming down. So for those of you that like to read and or audiobooks, that's my favorite. I love to listen to Dr. Shefali Tsabary. This is one of her books, The Conscious Parent. Excellent book. And again, and in there, she makes a really important point. We want children to be authentic, yet we want them to learn to contain, right? And in order to be a, I guess, a balanced adult and individual, you have to have both. You have to be able to be authentic, but at the same time, you need to be able to contain, right? So, for example, when children are very young, they don't have the ability to contain, right? When you see a child that's happy, they're super happy and they're jumping in the street and they're happy and they're yelling and they're playing around. Because there's none of that containment. As we get older, we start containing, right? So a child needs to learn to contain, but at the same time, still be authentic, right? And I think that as parents, that's exactly what we need to be teaching our children. How do we allow them to still keep that authenticity that children have? That's so beautiful that we actually as adults try to recreate every single day, and then, but at the same time, be able to contain. I think it's important for children to be able to still maintain their authenticity, and us as parents, you know, encourage them to remain authentic, and at the same time able to contain this authenticity. How do they contain it, right? And as children get older, that's exactly what they learn to do. And us as parents, it's this dance that we do at all times to teach them, you know, the balance between being authentic, yet at the same time being able to contain, right? So this is the end of my three-part series in mindful disciplining. And I hope that you can join me. If you like this video, please share it with friends, and you can like it as well. There will be some information at the bottom of this video that you can click the link and get some more information about the course that I will be offering. So I would love to see you there. I'm taking in the first 20 families. So the way that I'm breaking it down is we will have 4 phone calls, video conference calls, that are live, where we will discuss 4 different parenting topics about discipline. And then you will have the chance to get a one-on-one phone consult with me, specifically to cater to your family's needs. And then I will prepare an action plan for your family based on what we've discussed and what needs to be addressed first, and send that to you in an email. So if it's something that you're interested in, I would love to have you. Please click at the bottom of this video at the link, and you can get some more information. So I'll see you soon. Please share this video, and see you on the other side.